Hello. Okay, my name is Brittany. I'm an addict. Hello. I'm grateful to be here, grateful to be clean. In a meeting of Narcotics Anonymous. I feel awkward. This is weird. I'm grateful to be here. I'm grateful to be in Thailand. This was definitely not on my list of things to do when I got clean. It wasn't ever in the realm of possibility for me. I had barely left the state when I got clean. I'm grateful to be here. I really don't feel good. I'm very dizzy. I just feel kind of like jet lagged, and it was like a 24-hour travel I'm from Arizona, USA. And so traveling here was a chore for sure. And I think it's kind of hitting me now. We got in on Wednesday. I don't really know what day it is. I think it was Wednesday we got in. And so, I was talking to Gil a little bit before this, and I'm like, do you like to share? Because I'm full of fear right now. I just, typically when I share, I feel pretty comfortable. I feel pretty, you know what I mean? And today I don't. I feel very out of sorts. I'm not in my area, I think is part of it. I don't know a lot of people here. I just feel kind of uncomfortable. And so I'm full of fear. And thank you.
Palm Springs.
I love that. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So I do have a couple Arizona people here that I'm familiar with, and it makes me feel good too. And everyone's been super welcoming. It's not anything. It's just all within me, right? The insecurity, the fear, and just the change. And I don't like change, even if it's like a positive change. Going to freaking Thailand and spending 3 weeks over here. What a gift. That is a blessing. And so as I'm sitting here, as Dalton's chairing the meeting, I'm like, okay, my topic's living the program, steps 10, 11, 12, and I'm like, why would they give me that topic, 10, 11, 12, my least favorite steps, right? Which is not true. I all the steps are important, but it's just kind of where my head goes, right? As I'm sitting here, I'm just like, how do I show up today? I live the program. That's how I show up. If I can just rely on falling back on that, living the program, then I'm going to be okay. And I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful that I can have these moments of insecurity, these moments of fear, and just that, that slight shift in perspective and just remembering where I came from, it changes everything for me. And I'm so grateful for that, because I believe everybody in this room has walked through some fear, right? And so, when I think about living the program, I was like, kind of pondering it, because I wasn't even for sure I was going to share it. CJ had mentioned it months ago, and haven't heard anything since. And then I show up and I'm sharing, and I'm like, all right, we keep our word. And, so when I heard my topic, I was like, man, there's been a lot this past year, has been such a challenge for me. And it's been such a challenge learning how to live the program in different ways, different areas of my life. Step 12 talks about we practice these principles in all of our affairs. It's these principles that I've learned through working the steps, right? I'm going to back up a little bit. When I first got clean, I remember sitting in a meeting and reading, there was like a list of spiritual principles on the wall, and I'm like, those are cool, That's about as far as the thought went about spiritual principles. And as I started working the steps and paying attention in meetings and kind of absorbing the information that was given to me, I learned that there were spiritual principles behind each step. I'm like, oh, they're connected. The concept was mind-blowing. I'm like, oh, man. And then, learning about my higher power and how to, build a relationship with my higher power and, living, in my higher power as well. I was so conflicted. I had no idea how to do that until someone told me, well, why don't you just act in spiritual principles? If you just act in spiritual principles, then you're living in your higher power as well. And it was broken down that simply for me. And so today, when I'm like in conflict and I'm like in my head and it's just my ego, I just have to remember, like, just pause and just practice the principles, and I grew up in Arizona, and I always share, like, I had a really great childhood, and for a while I thought that I did, until I started doing some work on myself, and I realized that I had a pretty shitty childhood, and I was just kind of familiar with that lifestyle, and so it was like I was accustomed to it, and so it was acceptable to me. And then as I, stayed clean and learned that I could live differently, it started to become like not okay. But when, I was a dancer, and, my family was, I have a mom and a dad, and I've got, a house, and, we live in a nice part of Arizona, and I've got 4 brothers, and there's food on the table, I have a bed to sleep in, I have, everything that I could want, and I never had to question anything. And then my parents split up when I was 11, and that was like earth-shattering, and it was something that was so, it rocked my world, man. Divorce really shook my just my spirit. And, feeling for the first time, like, just the feeling of instability was, I don't know, it terrified me. And so, after that, my mom, she's one of us, and I didn't know it, and I don't think she knew it until she was like in her 40s after my dad and her split up, and she, jumped into her disease, and, she's an addict, and I was, I lived with a using addict from the age 11 until, she's still out there using today. And this is stuff that I have gotten to work through with my step work, and there's moments in time where I feel okay in my spirit about it, and I feel acceptance, and I feel love, and I feel like I have forgiven her, and I feel like I have let it go. And then there's moments like now when I'm like, I'm not in my, my safe space, and I'm feeling kind of out of sorts, and, my spiritual condition is kind of like, it's not suffering, but I'm just kind of, and I just am more emotional about it, I guess, today. And, my mom is out using in Alliance, Nebraska, a small, shitty town, and I'm in Thailand living clean, and I grew up with her wreckage. And it's like, how, why, how is that possible? That's crazy to me, and the stuff that she exposed me to, and the people, places, and things that I had to experience because of her disease, it's, of course I grew up and chose that lifestyle. I didn't know any different, and all I knew were feelings of fear, unsafety. Like I never felt secure. I felt, we got evicted from every house that we lived in after that, and finally the lights stopped turning on and off, and if we wanted to take a bath, we were boiling water on the stove, and and it was just like a complete 180, and it was scary. And I remember being a little girl and just so full of fear. And an addict shared at the workshop before this, and I just so identified with the wreckage and the mess, the chaos that was going on inside the home, and walking out with that mask on like nothing is going on. And that's what I had to do every day. I had to put this mask on and walk outside and be a part of the world. And my mom's inside, getting loaded and not feeding us, and I'm just, everything's okay, because I knew that if I had said something, that my life would change, because, the people that were around me, I knew that they would do something, and I would be removed from my mom. And as awful as it was, as much as I hated it, as, depressing and, just toxic as it was, I chose that, because it was familiar, right? And it's like I was conditioned to believe that this was where I was supposed to be as a young girl, and so yeah, my childhood was not great as I thought it was, and I grew up, and I barely graduated from high school. I only graduated because I had, teachers that felt bad for me, kind of thing, and so, and my disease really kind of took off from there. And, I got to experience, what we all experience, the wreckage of my using. And so being in Thailand today mm-hmm. and being full of fear and being out of sorts and kind of just in this weird space spiritually, I get to remember what it used to be like, and the people that I surrounded myself with, and I never ever would have traveled 24 hours to get to another country. You know, it was impossible for me. And so since I got, to get clean, I made the decision to get clean. My clean date is December 3rd of 2014. So I celebrated 10 years in December, and I'm so grateful for that. And that's, thank you. You know, and like when I get accolades, I feel very uncomfortable. I'm like, don't clap. Please don't. Just let me skim over that real quick, you know. When I would add 2 years, 3 years, and all that, I was like, don't you fucking realize I have 2 years clean, you know, like, can't, like, acknowledge me, you know. And now I'm just like, it's such an asset, you know what I mean? Like, that date for me is one of my greatest assets, and it's something that I hold sacred. And I'm so grateful for that, because with that date has come like a lifetime of just stuff, you know, that this program offers, and I've gotten to live this program. You know, when I got here, I was told to go to meetings, get a sponsor, work the steps, you know, and so that's exactly what I did. You know, I found a sponsor, and I picked that sponsor based off of the way she looked, because I had no idea how to judge someone's character off. I had no idea what integrity looked like. I didn't know what being a woman of, that practiced spiritual principles in her life. So I picked her because she had tattoos and she was beautiful. And I'm grateful that my higher power put her in my life, because she was perfect, you know, and she walked me through my first set of steps. And then, I found another sponsor, and I'm actually on my third sponsor now. And, she's got 42 years clean, and she is the mother that I had always wanted. You know, she is nurtured me through this last 10, not 10 years, but 8 years of my life, and she's carried me, and many members have, and, for the first 8-9 years of my recovery, like it felt good, and that's a lie. That's not true. The first 5 years were not good. I struggled when I got clean. And I was, for the first 4 or 5 years, I struggled severely with depression. And I was so out of sorts, and I was so insecure, and I was so full of shame and guilt. And, but I hid behind that, and I didn't let a lot of people in, but I got intimate with my home group like I'm told to do, and I would share about it, and I would show up, and I would share about it, and I'd show up, and I'd share about it, and I'd cry, and I just really struggled, and that's the truth. I did not experience the freedom that I thought I should be experiencing in Narcotics Anonymous, you know what I mean? Like, I had this expectation that it all would be lifted, and our promise is freedom from, like, using drugs, right, from active addiction, and that promise has been granted. It was granted the moment I, became a member of Narcotics Anonymous. I haven't had to experience relapse, and I'm grateful for that. But I was still struggling with like, my mental health. And living the program through, like, wanting to die every day clean is fucking hard, and I struggled for years with that, and it was so easy for me just now to lie and be like, it was good, but it wasn't good. I struggled, and I didn't experience the freedom that I thought I should be experiencing, and I knew that there was something more, but I kept sharing about it. I was honest about it with a couple people, and and I sought outside help, and, I've done all the things, and, I can say today with the work that I put in, like, it took this addict much, much longer than it might take others. I watch my husband, he's just like, I'm like, how are you not depressed? Like, how do you know what I mean? Like, when we first got together, I'm like, you don't want to die? Like, this is normal to me. That was normal to me. And it's like, I remember him telling me, like, I didn't get clean to be miserable. And I'm like, I feel miserable. And so what I didn't do was I did not use. The only thing I did perfect was I did not use. I have not used, and I'm grateful for that, I didn't want to use. I wanted to die, and I didn't act on that either, and I'm grateful for that. I stuck around. I've stayed. I've continued to show up. I've never been, the member that's like, I'll show up on my, clean date and then come, not come back for another year. I've been diligent, I show up to meetings. I'm of service. I practice these principles in all of my affairs, even when I feel like dying. That's what was hard for me, and I can say today, that I have freedom, even in the midst of the craziness that goes on within my spirit, in my head. I don't, I have experienced freedom, and I believe, because I have continued to show up and do the work and take suggestions, and not act, well, I do act on self-will often, but, those moments when it really matters, I'm like, all right, like I surrender, right? Like I surrender, and I've gotten to experience the freedom, like I remember laying in bed and just saying, like, I want to feel like me, and I don't know what that feels like. And that was the conflict, right? Like, what does that even feel like? And today, I don't know, it's like the spiritual awakening, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps. And everyone's spiritual awakening might look different, right? My spiritual awakenings are subtle. I don't have the aha, the bush is on fire, whatever. It's like there's these little moments in time where I can stop and like I pause. I listen to what my sponsor says, and she says, just pause. And I do that, and I'm able to feel that shift in my spirit. Those are the spiritual awakenings that I have. They're very subtle. And oftentimes it's when I look back and I'm like, oh, that's what that is. It's not like this grand, aha moment. It's, I have some light bulb moments for sure. But those shifts in my spirit where it's just like things are just a bit different today, those are huge for me. And I'm so grateful for that, and so that's what I've gotten to experience being here. And, learning how to live with my mother who's actively using, live with knowing that she's actively using. And I've had to, learn to let go, and just trust my higher power. And that's, that was one of the biggest things when I got clean, was letting go of my family. And, everybody in all my brothers are addicts, and I'm the person that saves everybody. And I want to fix everybody, and I have the answers because I'm a Narcotics Anonymous member, and don't you know, I know the answer. And but they don't want to listen, right? Until they're ready. I wasn't willing to listen until I was ready. And then that shift in my spirit happened on December 2nd. I made the decision to stop using the next day, and I did. I'm so grateful for that. And so I just kind of hope maybe one day that'll happen for her. I really do want to share about what it's been like living this program the past couple years. And the only reason I'm going to do this is it's so weird. And I was saying on our like bus ride here, me and my husband and our two friends, I was like, I don't want to share. And, Joel says, luckily you're in the care of. Yes. And in my head, I'm like, whatever, stupid. But I know in my spirit that that's the truth, right? I'm like, I am in the care of, and sometimes I know it's always the care of my higher power, but sometimes I'm in the care of my husband, and like, I didn't know he was going to chair the meeting, so it's nice to have him with me. But the last few years have been a challenge for me, and it's when I think about living the program, when I think about that topic, I immediately go to the last couple years, and for the first 3 years, I don't know, I refused to share in meetings about this. It refused. I would not let you in. There is no way, and I remember like my husband shares about it, and he's healing, and he's walking through this process, and he's connecting with people about it, and I am like a wall. Absolutely not. This pain is mine. You don't get to have it, and I don't want to hear what you have to fucking say about it. That's the truth, right? Like, I don't want your solutions because they're not going to help. It's just like my ego, my addict thinking, but that's where I am, I don't want to let people in. And a few months ago, I let my higher power in, and I felt compelled to share about it. And let me tell you, because my husband's been saying, so if you share about it, like your pain shared is pain lessened. And I'm like, I don't believe that. Not with this. And I finally took some suggestions, and I shared at this at a workshop a few months back. And let me tell you, the pain was lessened. I know, mind-blowing. But like the shift in my spirit, it was just like, just because I took a suggestion. But the last, I married my husband, and he's a fabulous, wonderful human being, and we have a great relationship, and it's built. I believe I can say this with confidence, that we have a loving relationship that's, based on a foundation of our higher powers and Narcotics Anonymous and just living this program. And so, we wanted to have kids, and so many, the first thing people say, it's like, oh, do you have any kids? And I'm just like, we have tried for many years to be able to have children, and we cannot. The end result over the last 5 years or so is that we cannot have children naturally. It's just not something that is possible for us. And the pain that I have felt during, and we have done everything, and I, so I share this with, I appreciate suggestions because I'm sure I'm going to receive them after the meeting. I don't need them. That's just that's the truth. I know what I need to do. I know what I've needed to do. There's nothing to do. It just is what it is. And it is the most painful thing I have ever experienced because, I had this idea growing up, like, I will never do what my mother did to me, and I will do it different. And I'm going to break the cycle, and I'm going to raise a son or a daughter in a loving home. And, I meet someone that I want to do that with, and then, God's plan is different than mine. And it's, it's been a challenge. And I feel like, I didn't get to have a mother, and I also do not get to be a mother. And I have to sit and listen to all these wonderful women in Narcotics Anonymous share about how they've healed through parenting, and I don't get to do that. And it crushes my spirit. Thank you. And it makes me very resentful. It makes me not want to be associated with you. It makes me not want to connect with you because I envy you. And I'm living in this pain. And so that's how I feel in this moment. And I know that my higher power has a great plan for me and for my husband. And I know that when I feel that divide between us, because you're sharing about something that you cherish and that you get to experience, that it's my ego attacking me and it's my disease separating me from you. That's all that is. And it's been hard. And battling and living this program and living through this pain spiritually, because I want to live it not spiritually when I'm feeling this way, and I want to remove you, and I want to cut ties with people and things, and but the solution for me today is connection. And so I get to pause, and I get to feel how I feel. I get to honor it. I get to acknowledge it, because it's so important how I'm feeling. I believe that there's purpose for me, and in order to find that purpose and to believe in that and to feel it, I need to stay clean, and I need to remember that connection with Narcotics Anonymous, and I do not get to do that if I'm living in my pain. You know what I mean? I can feel it, and I can honor it and all that, but when I act through that is when the problems really start in my life, and I don't want to live like that today, and so I had to get honest, and kind of share what was on my heart, and feeling just kind of disconnected because of that today. Some days are better, but that's where I'm at, and I hope there was some solution in that. But Dalton told me before, I think was saying, Paul was saying, I share for relief and not effect, and I wanted to feel some relief, and I needed a meeting, and so thank you for allowing me to share, and I'm so grateful to be here at this convention and connect with you guys, and yeah, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.